Hey, what's going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle coming to you from the Draft.com studios with another episode of the Fantasy Headliners. Thanks so much for tuning in to watch Start and Sit for tight ends here in Week 3 of the NFL season. Gotta be honest with you, Headliner Nation. Always try to get these videos out before Thursday Night Football, but had some issues arise. So the first issue, trying to record an episode, and my computer decided to restart and update itself. And then my settings changed, and when I went back and recorded the next episode, there was no sound when I got all done. So I apologize that it's coming through a little bit late, but better late than never. Let's take a look at last week's percentages. Down quite a bit. So I was over 70% for tight ends in week 1, down to 61% in week 2. But ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get back up over 70% this week. I can feel it. Let's get moving forward. Let's talk about what tight ends you should have in your lineup and who you should leave on your bench here in week 3 of the NFL season. All right, Headliner Nation, Thursday Night Football is going to be done by the time you watch this episode. Still wanted to be upfront and honest, though. I had Delanie Walker as a start this week, and when I started recording the show, we were about to end the first quarter of Thursday Night Football, and Delanie Walker didn't have any points. He didn't have any receptions as of yet. We'll see what happens the rest of the game, but I did have him as a start this week, and then for Jacksonville, I had O'Shaughnessy and Swaim as a sit, but I just wanted to toss it out there, so you still knew where I stood on these players. Want to be honest with you, so we can count them towards next week's totals. All right, the next matchup, Cincinnati at Buffalo. Going to sit all three of these guys in this matchup. Eifert was able to find the end zone last week. That's going to be where all of his upside is. Can he find the end zone? If he can, great. If he can't, don't really want to gamble on that. And then Dawson Knox from the Buffalo Bills. Not going to start either of these guys or all three of these guys. I'm going to leave them all on the bench because in this matchup, both of these teams are giving up less than 7 points per game to opposing tight ends. It's going to be a tough matchup, not nearly a high enough ceiling to put any of them in my lineup in week 3. Well, it doesn't matter who Miami's playing. You will always put that opposing team in your lineup, and it doesn't change this week. Going to be taking Jason Witten and putting him into my lineup. The Miami Dolphins giving up 21.4 points per game to opposing tight ends. Jason Witten definitely has a lot of upside this week. He was able to find the end zone for the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. Now, the reason that I've got him starting and Jarwin on the bench is because Witten's going to be that red zone threat. Yes, Jarwin has the capability to put together a little bit more volume, but Witten's going to be the guy that Prescott's going to look for in the red zone, and that's why I'm going to have him because of that touchdown upside. Now, with Mike Gesicki, yes, the Cowboys did give up a lot of points to Evan Ingram in week 1, but that's still not enough for me to put Gesicki in my lineup. Josh Rosen's going to be starting this week, that we know. Will there be a little bit of a connection there? We'll see what happens, but he's far too risky. It would have to be a really good matchup. Last week he had a really good matchup. I listed him as a start. It didn't work out. We're not going to take that risk again in week 3. Denver at Green Bay, and I'm going to go ahead and put Jimmy Graham in the lineup and list him as a start for the second straight week after I missed on him in week 1. Denver giving up the 8th most points to opposing tight ends right now, just over 15 points per game. But with that being said, the Green Bay Packers are giving up the second least amount of points to opposing tight ends, just over 3 points per game to opposing tight ends. Noah Fant, a guy that I listed as a start last week, I thought maybe he would have a good enough matchup to get you some points and be considered a start. However, this week, I don't like the matchup, a very tough one. Hasn't really been relied on by Joe Flacco yet, but with Jimmy Graham, we're going to toss him in the lineup. A good matchup against the Denver Broncos, a good chance to find the end zone again, and a good start for you in your lineup in week 3. Atlanta at Indianapolis, and Austin Hooper really hasn't lost a step since last season. A lot of people were worried that with Devonta Freeman being back and healthy that he might not see nearly as many targets. However, he's caught 13 of 15 targets so far this season, and his 15 targets are third most on the Atlanta Falcons. Unfortunately, we can't say the same about the tight ends in Indianapolis. Jack Doyle, who was a favorite of Jacoby Brissett a couple of years ago, just hasn't done nearly enough. And even though Eric Ebron found the end zone last week, that's really been his only upside all season, was the one touchdown catch. I can't find myself putting him in my lineup every single week, hoping for that one touchdown in an offense that maybe just won't run as smoothly through the passing game as it would have, obviously, with Andrew Luck. So we're going to go ahead and continue to sit these two. I'm going to have to see a lot more out of them. Maybe as we get rolling into the season and Jacoby Brissett gets settled in, we see a little bit more. But T.Y. Hilton has continued to be the favorite target. That's going to happen moving forward. These two guys aren't going to have a ton of upside any given week. It would have to be a really, really good matchup for them to find my lineup. Hey, not much can be said about this matchup other than if you own Mark Andrews or Travis Kelce, they're going to be in your lineup. It doesn't matter. And if you own both of them for some reason, then put one in your flex position. Both of them have a ton of upside this week. Both of them are top 4 tight ends for me this week. Deploy them as necessary. You're going to get a lot of points, and they can definitely help you towards a victory in week 3 of the fantasy football season. Darren Waller's 15 targets for the Oakland Raiders leads the team right now, and a guy that we have been telling you since the draft guide came out to get has came through for Headliner Nation so far. So hopefully you were listening at the very beginning and you got some Darren Waller shares because he is not disappointed yet. Continuing this week, even against a tough Minnesota defense, we are not going to sit Darren Waller. Now, for Kyle Rudolph, not necessarily the same thing. We're going to go ahead and sit him right now. This is not an offense that has been passing very much. And this is a game at home that if Dalvin Cook can go ahead and get this team jump started and out to an early lead, we may not see a bunch of passing attempts anyway. So we'll see what happens. Even if we do see Kirk Cousins throw a lot more than we have so far, he is a start for me this week. I think he's a pretty decent play. If we see that, Kyle Rudolph probably won't be included too much, so don't worry about him this week. He'll find your bench for another week this season. No tight ends to start in this matchup. Both the Jets and the New England Patriots giving up less than 7 points per game to opposing tight ends. But it doesn't matter who you see on this roster. No one's being used enough to be included in the start column. Now, when Chris Herndon comes back, maybe we get him involved a little bit more in the start column. But for right now, Griffin's going to be a sit, and then anybody on the Patriots roster is going to be a sit as well right now. Continue to move forward. Most of these guys are probably going to be on waivers anyway, so you're not going to have to worry about it. No upside plays in this week. So Zach Ertz is going to continue to be a start for me, even though he's going to be facing a Lions defense that has given up the least amount of points per game to opposing tight ends. Now, they haven't really faced anybody yet. Obviously, not really anyone to write home about in Arizona. And last week against the Chargers, Hunter Henry had already gone down with his injury, so they didn't end up seeing him. So Zach Ertz is going to be a real test for them. Now, Ertz still continues to show upside this week because who else is left to throw to there? They're having a lot of injuries right now, so Ertz is going to get plenty of volume to be a starter for you this week. And TJ Hawkinson, he had a huge week 1, came crashing back down to earth in week 2, but he gets an Eagles defense that's giving up more than 13 points per game to opposing tight ends. So he's a solid start this week. Go ahead and put both of these guys in your lineup. They'll return starter value for you. Arizona is currently giving up 30 points per game, more than 30 points per game actually, to opposing tight ends. So even though Cam Newton probably will not be playing this week for the Carolina Panthers and it'll be Kyle Allen instead, Greg Olsen is still sure to have a great week, and he's a top 5 tight end option for me this week. In for a really good week. If you own Greg Olsen, put him in your lineup 100%. Now, for the Arizona Cardinals, however, Charles Clay is not a guy that I anticipate putting in my lineup anytime soon. Only 2 targets this season. Not really even viable to hold. He's going to be on your waiver wire, but Greg Olsen won't be. He'll be owned, and he'll be in your lineup. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are giving up the 7th most points per game to opposing tight ends right now, and that bodes well for Evan Ingram. And it sounds like Sterling Shepard will be back this week as well, so a little help to take the pressure off of him. He should bounce back well this week and have another big week for the New York Giants. Now, on the other side of the ball, O.J. Howard, a guy that we liked this offseason, just hasn't really done what we hoped he would so far. Now, I still am holding out hope for him, however. I'm not dropping him if I own him. I think they can still get him involved. But until then, we're going to leave him on our bench. I would rather be a week late to putting him in my lineup instead of continuing to put him in my lineup every single week and just not having it happen. So for right now, go ahead and put him on your bench. That's A-okay. If he breaks out, then we know for next week we'll put him back in the starting lineup. Quick matchup here for you. Neither of these guys are going to be used enough at this point to put in your lineup. Now, I am keeping an eye on Virgil Green in deeper leagues, especially in any type of tight end premium leagues. Maybe in a deeper roster league, like a 16-team league or something like that. I'll keep an eye on him. He could end up being used enough this season where during really good matchups, you could put him in your lineup. but not nearly close enough as of yet. So either of these guys, if they're on your roster, don't worry about putting them in your lineup. Neither of them have nearly enough upside this week. Congratulations to those of you who are Vance McDonald's owners and didn't panic after week 1. If you held on to him and started him last week, you got a couple of touchdowns from him. And with Mason Rudolph being under center now, that could even help Vance McDonald moving forward with more volume. Continue to deploy him as a top 10 tight end option. He should be in your starting lineup. And even if you're a little disappointed that George Kittle hasn't had a huge game yet, he had a couple of touchdowns called back in week 1. Doesn't matter. He still leads the 49ers in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. So he's basically their wide receiver 1 right now. He's going to be the main target there still. Continue to put him in your lineup. Bigger days are ahead. Is this the week that Jared Cook finally breaks out with the New Orleans Saints and bounces back after 2 very mediocre to underperforming weeks to start the season? It very well could be. The Seattle Seahawks are giving up the 3rd most points to opposing tight ends right now. And with Teddy Bridgewater being the starting quarterback, who knows? Maybe he targets Jared Cook a little bit more than what Drew Brees did. Now, it is a little bit worrisome that Jared Cook had some targets last week and continued to drop them. We don't want to see that with Jared Cook, so continue to eye the situation. But if there was a matchup for him to bounce back, this would be it. Will Dissly, even though I had him as a start last week, we're going to go ahead and put him back on the bench. The New Orleans Saints are giving up the 5th least amount of fantasy points to opposing tight ends right now. It's going to be a tough matchup for him. Go ahead and put him on the bench. Even if he scores a touchdown this week, not going to be a ton of volume for him. Probably not going to be worthy of a start regardless. It's going to be a fun game on Sunday Night Football as the Los Angeles Rams head into Cleveland for a Sunday night matchup. But with that being said, it's not going to be nearly as fun for the tight ends. Both Higbee and Everett, both of them have touchdown upside every single week, but there isn't going to be nearly enough volume there to consider putting him in your lineup. With Cooks and with Kupp, obviously you have Woods, Gurley as well. All those guys are going to see volume and pass attempts before Higbee and Everett. So those targets are going to go towards those other guys. Not nearly enough volume. David Njoku, even though he's going to be out, we're not going to start Brown. He was the only other tight end listed on the depth chart after last week. That will obviously change this week. I don't expect anything big out of him, though. Don't worry about trying to grab him off waivers and play him if you're a Njoku owner. Just find someone else for right now. Monday Night Football, and maybe it surprises you a little bit to see both of those players listed as a start for me this week. Let me tell you why. With Vernon Davis, the Chicago Bears are giving up 17.15 points per game to opposing tight ends right now. That's 5th most in the National Football League. So whether it be Jordan Reed or Vernon Davis, I didn't include Reed this week because I don't know if he's going to be ready to go again. Right now, it doesn't appear like it. That could change, though. So Davis is going to be the guy that we look at right now. I'm going to go ahead and start him. A really good matchup. Now, with that being said, with Trey Burton, the guy that missed out on week 1, we have not been very high here at the Fantasy Headliners. But I still think that he has a game here or there where he's prone to a big performance. And that could happen against a Washington Redskins team that's giving up 14.8 fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. This is a good matchup for him. And I also listed Mitchell Trubisky as a start this week. Again, we're not big Mitchell Trubisky fans here. Nothing against him or the Bears. Just don't think he's very consistent. However, he is prone to those huge games. That could happen against Washington this week. Trey Burton could be on the receiving end of several plays, including a touchdown. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Wrapping up start and sit tight ends for week 3. Keep an eye on those rankings videos. We're going to have a lot of content coming out leading up to kickoff on Sunday. So make sure you're checking out all the videos here on the channel to get you ready to go. As always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification symbol as well. So anytime we have a video drop or we go live, especially for the Saturday night show, you are ready and raring to go for that. Thanks so much, Headliner Nation. Appreciate your support. We'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.